talking about the 75th anniversary of D-Day, the D-Day landings. And, I've been to France. I was on holiday there a long time ago. It wasn't far from the D-Day beaches where the American and British and Canadian troops and others landed to push the Germans back, ultimately to Germany. And it was the start of the end of World War II. And kind of when you stand on those beaches, as they are now, very flat beaches, they're all named after the names that they were given on D-Day, and you just see it as it is now, and then imagine all these young men, terrified, most of them, arriving on these amphibious craft and wading through the water to get to the beach, while Germans were shooting from both the air and from the cliff tops. And it is an extraordinary thought what they did. But it's even more sickening when you do the research into the background of World War II and World War I, come to that. And you then see these people like the Queen and Trump and other politicians standing there making their speeches and what have you at the 75th anniversary, actually, which happened, the event marking the 75th with the Queen and Trump happened about 4 miles across the sea from where I'm sitting now in Portsmouth, on the south coast of Britain. Portsmouth, for people around the world who come across this, was a major, the major naval base at the time of World War II, and they talk about fighting for values and all that stuff. But when you do the research and you realise that the people that manipulated World War II and World War I and all these other wars since have no values whatsoever, and you symbolised by the Queen, because the Queen, obviously, they call them the Windsors, but really they're the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas, a German, quote, royal bloodline, and their royal relatives in Germany at the time of World War I and World War II were supporters of the German elite, the Nazis in Second World War and Kaiser Wilhelm in the First World War, that caused those two wars. At least on the face of it, caused those two wars. They physically caused the wars by invading other countries, but there were other forces behind them, not least in the United States and Britain. The Queen's family changed their name from Saxe-Coburg-Gotha to Windsor during World War I because they were having some bad PR in that their relatives in Germany were attacking the United Kingdom and sending over planes called Gotas to bomb Britain, and so they changed the name to Windsor, going back to the whole Windsor Castle thing, just outside of London, to anglicise their name for nothing more than PR reasons. And there was another royal offshoot from Germany called Battenberg, which changed its name at the same time to Mountbatten, hence Lord Mountbatten, who was a well-known member of the royal family and a close friend of Jimmy Savile, the record-breaking paedophile who operated at the centre of the British royal family for decades, a close friend also of Prince Charles. And there was a guy called Blunt, who became basically the keeper of the Queen's pictures. He was an art guy. And Anthony Blunt, his name was. And he was part of a Russian spy ring in Britain. And while other members of the ring were outed, he wasn't for a long time, until the time of Margaret Thatcher, and then he was outed, by which time he was keeper of the Queen's pictures. But Anthony Blunt, at the end of World War II, because Blunt was involved in British intelligence, he was sent to Germany as the Allies arrived there to mop up and pick up correspondence, etc., between members of the British royal family and their Nazi-supporting relatives in Germany. And, to see the British royal family standing there commemorating the 75th anniversary of D-Day and all the people, all the troops that died as a result, was truly head-shaking, really. But it's like everything else. If you don't do the research into the real background to events like World War II, you can buy the presentation that you're presented with. And the Rockefellers in America, obviously a major elite family bloodline, they paid for a whole floor of a university in Germany for the work of Ernst Rudin, the Nazi race purity expert, to go about his eugenic madness. And of course, the Rockefellers, along with other elite families, were very much the drivers of the eugenics movement, which was happening in America. People don't realize. In And the Truth Shall Set You Free, way back, I wrote that in 1994, I exposed the eugenics that was going on in America, where kids who were not considered intelligent enough were sterilized, both boys and girls. What, in America? Yes, that was what was going on, not least in the Carolinas. And then, of course, Adolf Hitler and the Nazis gave eugenics a bad name because of what happened. And it went underground and became known as things like, Planned Parenthood, which the organization that we know as Planned Parenthood today, it started out life under another name in the eugenics movement. But you will have members of the Rockefeller family standing up and saying, oh yes, we must commemorate all the dead and the heroes from World War II. And the question that comes from that is, oh yes, they fought for our freedom. Well, yeah, but it was people in the land of so-called freedom that were overwhelmingly behind having it taken away by the Nazis, and were supporting them. I mean, the Bush family, the grandfather to Boy Bush and father of Father Bush, Prescott Bush, his name was. He was one of the funders of Hitler, along with other families, like the Harriman family, etc., in America, they were funding Hitler. And the Nazis, the Dulles brothers were involved in that. They used to sign off their letters to German clients, Heil Hitler, before the war. And so this is all kind of exposed in my books. So you look at something like World War II and you get the official story, or that the horrible Nazis tried to do this and the good guys then responded. Well, of course the Nazis were unspeakable. But the quote good guys, if you like, were not the people behind those forces in the West that, or in the America and Canada, Britain, etc., that responded to Hitler. It was the rank and file people who were wading through the water on D-Day, being shot at from all angles. And what was the outcome? The outcome was that those that were behind the war, the Rockefellers, etc., the Bushes, they made a fortune out of it, and after the war went on with their privileged existence. But what happened to the, quote, heroes, who other people with a privileged existence in Portsmouth last week, like the Queen, said they were commemorating? Well, they came back to the same poverty, overwhelmingly, that they'd left. They weren't fighting for freedom in the way that it's been portrayed. They were fighting to maintain a control system, of course not knowing so, that kept them in poverty and continued to do so when they came back. And of course it continues today. So again, the presentation is everything with these people, because the presentation is about manipulating perception. And I have seen from time to time in these commemorations where elderly people who fought in the Second World War have tears in their eyes when they see the Queen. What a wonderful lady. And I do understand that, because they've been brought up to believe in king, queen and country. But if they only looked beyond the official version of everything, they would see it looks very, very different. And all these years later, what really has changed? We're now increasingly drowning in poverty and deprivation, more and more people being pulled into that. People say I talk about some weird stuff, some far out stuff. But how about that chair that you're sitting in isn't solid? How weird is that? This reality is nothing like we think it is.
When I saw what Icke is doing, I was a bit jealous on him. Wow, look at what this guy's doing.
I don't know if anybody else could do it but him, actually.
We are in a period now where speaking your truth is not just important, it's utterly crucial to where humanity goes from here. The world needs renegades.